What makes you trust a weapon with your life? Is it the precision of its engineering, the reliability of its mechanism, or the reputation of its manufacturer? For most intelligence agencies during the Cold War, trust came from sophistication and proven technology. But what if I told you that KGB operatives sometimes trusted a weapon that looked like it was assembled from garbage more than they trusted a precision-manufactured pistol? This wasn't about desperation or lack of resources. The Soviet Union had some of the finest weapons factories in the world. This was about understanding something deeper about how covert operations actually work in the real world. Sometimes the weapon that looks like junk is exactly the weapon that will save your life, not despite its crude appearance, but because of it. Today you're going to discover why KGB field operatives learned to love a weapon that Western intelligence officers would have been embarrassed to carry, and how that ugly piece of improvised-looking hardware became one of the most trusted tools in Soviet covert operations. Prague, November 1968. A KGB agent walks through a checkpoint at the West German border carrying a small toolkit in his luggage. Border guards open the case and examine the contents: screwdrivers, pliers, wire cutters, and what appears to be a homemade zip gun constructed from pipe fittings and wrapped in electrical tape. The agent, posing as a Czech factory worker seeking asylum, explains nervously that he made the crude weapon for protection during his escape, worried about criminals who prey on refugees. The guards look at the ugly improvised firearm, exchange glances, and make a decision. This is clearly not the weapon of a professional operative. Intelligence agents carry sophisticated equipment, not basement workshop projects that look like they might explode when fired. The agent is processed as a legitimate refugee. His crude weapon is confiscated and logged as evidence of the desperate measures people take to escape the Eastern Bloc. And he continues into West Germany, where he will spend the next 3 weeks conducting surveillance on a NATO facility. The weapon that convinced the guards he was not a spy was manufactured in a KGB facility, specifically to look homemade. Its ugliness was its disguise, and that disguise just saved the operation. Before we dive deeper into this fascinating story, if you're enjoying this type of content that reveals the counterintuitive tactics of Cold War intelligence operations, hit that like button below, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more hidden stories from espionage history, and tell me in the comments, would you trust a weapon that looked like junk? Now let's discover why the KGB did. The story of the KGB's trust in crude-appearing weapons begins with understanding the fundamental challenges of covert operations in hostile territory. When a Soviet agent operated in Western Europe or the United States, they faced multiple layers of security designed to identify and neutralize foreign intelligence operatives. Border controls, police patrols, and counterintelligence services all looked for signs of professional tradecraft. One of the most obvious signs was possession of sophisticated equipment. A precision-manufactured suppressed pistol might be an excellent weapon from a technical standpoint, but if an agent was caught with it, the weapon itself became evidence of professional intelligence involvement. No amount of cover story could explain why an ordinary tourist or businessman carried military-grade hardware. The weapon designed to protect the agent became the evidence that convicted them. Soviet intelligence recognized that this created a paradox. The more sophisticated and reliable a weapon was, the more dangerous it became to carry because its sophistication revealed the carrier's true identity. The awful solution required reversing conventional thinking about what made a weapon valuable. Instead of prioritizing technical excellence, they needed to prioritize deniability. A weapon that looked like it was made by a skilled criminal or desperate amateur could be explained away. More importantly, such a weapon reinforced cover stories rather than contradicting them. A refugee carrying a crude homemade weapon made sense. A factory worker with an improvised zip gun was believable. The same person carrying a professionally manufactured suppressed pistol was obviously an intelligence operative regardless of what papers they carried or what story they told. This insight led to the development of what KGB instructors called operational camouflage weapons, though operatives usually just called them junk guns. These were firearms deliberately manufactured to appear crude and improvised while maintaining essential functionality. The weapons were designed in KGB technical facilities by skilled engineers, but every aspect of their construction emphasized the appearance of amateur manufacture. Barrels were made from ordinary steel tubing that showed rough edges and imperfect bores. Firing mechanisms used repurposed springs and basic leverage systems that looked like basement workshop solutions. Grips were wrapped in electrical tape or strips of rubber. Surface finishes were deliberately poor, with visible scratches, dents, and signs of hasty assembly. Some weapons included obviously scavenged parts like sections of bicycle frame or automotive components to reinforce the improvised aesthetic. What made these weapons genuinely trustworthy, rather than just crude-looking, was the hidden sophistication in their core functionality. While the exteriors screamed amateur construction, the critical components that determined safety and reliability were precision engineered. Chamber walls were carefully calculated to contain firing pressures safely. Firing pins were hardened to proper specifications to prevent breakage. Trigger mechanisms, though simple, had been tested extensively to ensure they would not fire accidentally. The barrels, despite their rough appearance, had been proof-tested to verify they could handle the ammunition they were designed for. A KGB operative carrying one of these weapons knew that while it looked like junk, it would fire when needed and would not explode in their hand. That combination of operational deniability and hidden reliability made the weapons trustworthy in ways that conventional firearms could never match. The ammunition developed for these weapons reflected the same philosophy of hidden sophistication beneath crude appearance. Standard military cartridges would have raised questions if discovered, so KGB ballisticians created special loads that appeared to be hand-assembled by amateurs. The cartridge cases showed irregularities and marks suggesting reloading, rather than factory manufacture. The bullets were cast lead, rather than jacketed military projectiles. The powder charges were carefully measured to provide reliable performance while using quantities that seemed consistent with amateur reloading. Some cartridges were even deliberately loaded with slight variations to mimic the inconsistency of homemade ammunition. The result was ammunition that looked like the product of someone with access to reloading equipment, but no professional training, perfectly matching the profile of the weapons they were designed for. Training operatives to use these weapons required overcoming psychological resistance that ran deep. Soviet agents, like their counterparts in any professional organization, had been trained to value quality equipment and to associate crude appearance with unreliability. The idea of trusting their lives to something that looked like it might have been assembled in a criminal's garage went against every instinct. KGB instructors addressed this through a combination of education and demonstration. They explained the operational logic of camouflage weapons in detail, showing how crude appearance served as protective coloration in the hostile environment of Western territory. Then they demonstrated reliability through extensive live-fire exercises, where operatives saw that these ugly weapons functioned consistently despite their appearance. Over time, experienced field agents came to genuinely prefer camouflage weapons for certain operations because they understood that the ugliness that initially made them uncomfortable was actually a critical security feature. If you're finding this content fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the ingenious tactics and unconventional methods that shaped Cold War covert operations. The operational advantages of camouflage weapons extended beyond simple deniability if caught. The weapons' crude appearance affected how they were perceived at every stage of an operation. When conducting reconnaissance or preparing for action, an agent could leave a camouflage weapon in a vehicle or hotel room with less concern than if they were carrying an obviously professional firearm. Hotel staff finding a crude zip gun during room cleaning might report it to management, but they would think criminal activity rather than espionage. Police discovering such a weapon during a routine stop would categorize the carrier as a criminal rather than a foreign agent, leading to completely different investigative procedures. This misdirection was valuable even when operations went wrong, because it sent investigators down paths that did not threaten intelligence networks or reveal operational methods. Case files from the Cold War era, many now declassified or revealed through defector testimony, show numerous instances where camouflage weapons provided crucial, operational security. In one documented case from 1972, a KGB agent conducting surveillance in West Berlin was stopped by police during a random checkpoint. A search of his vehicle revealed a crude-appearing pistol hidden under the seat. The agent explained he was involved in black market activities and needed protection from competitors. The story was believable because the weapon matched the profile of criminal armament rather than intelligence equipment. He was charged with weapons violations, paid a fine, and was deported. His actual intelligence mission remained undetected, and the networks he was supporting were never compromised. If he had been carrying a sophisticated weapon, the outcome would have been completely different, with interrogation focusing on espionage rather than criminal activity. Another case involved an operation in London in 1976, where an agent needed to eliminate a defector who was providing information to British intelligence. The weapon selected was a crude-appearing single-shot pistol that could be fired at close range and immediately discarded. After the killing, British police recovered the weapon, and their forensic analysis concluded it was a homemade criminal firearm. The investigation focused on criminal connections and personal motives rather than intelligence operations. It was only years later, after a defector revealed details of the operation, that the true nature of the killing became clear. The crude weapon had served exactly as designed, providing lethal capability while misdirecting the investigation away from state sponsorship. Western intelligence services gradually recognized the pattern of crude weapons appearing in contexts that suggested intelligence involvement rather than simple criminal activity. CIA analysts noticed that certain types of improvised firearms appeared repeatedly in cases involving suspected Soviet operations. British MI6 received information from sources inside Warsaw Pact intelligence agencies describing the camouflage weapon program and its operational philosophy. By the late 1970s, Western security services had developed awareness that crude appearance might be deliberate deception rather than evidence of amateur construction. Training programs taught investigators and border security personnel to look more carefully at apparently homemade weapons, examining them for signs of hidden sophistication or professional manufacture beneath crude exteriors. The countermeasures developed in response focused on forensic analysis techniques that could reveal manufactured weapons disguised as improvised ones. Metallurgical testing could sometimes identify precision manufacturing processes hidden beneath rough surface treatments. Functional testing might reveal reliability that exceeded what would be expected from true amateur construction. Component analysis could identify parts that appeared scavenged, but were actually manufactured specifically for the weapon. These techniques reduced but did not eliminate the effectiveness of camouflage weapons because the basic deception remained powerful. Even when investigators suspected a crude weapon might be professionally manufactured, proving it conclusively was difficult, and the presence of doubt itself served the operational security goals that made the weapons valuable. The KGB continued developing and refining camouflage weapons throughout the Cold War, adapting the concept to changing security environments and evolving threats. Later versions incorporated even more sophisticated internal mechanisms while maintaining or enhancing their crude external appearance. Some variants were designed to be assembled from truly ordinary components purchased locally, allowing agents to avoid the risk of transporting weapons across borders while still having access to firearms that looked appropriately crude for their cover identities. The program expanded beyond firearms to include other weapon systems like crude-appearing explosive devices and improvised edged weapons, all following the same principle of hidden capability beneath obviously amateur construction. Western agencies experimented with their own versions of deliberately crude weapons but found limited success. American and British operatives, products of cultures that associated professionalism with visible quality, struggled psychologically with equipment that looked unprofessional. There were concerns that deliberately crude weapons might actually be less reliable than their appearance suggested, creating a trust deficit that undermined operational confidence. Some agencies eventually developed weapons that struck a middle ground, appearing somewhat improvised without looking completely crude, but these never achieved the same level of operational acceptance that KGB camouflage weapons earned among Soviet operatives. The trust that KGB agents developed for these ugly weapons came from understanding that in covert operations, the relationship between appearance and capability is reversed from normal expectations. In conventional military operations, visible quality signals, capability, and professionalism. In covert operations, visible quality signals, danger, and compromise. The weapon that looks like junk becomes the weapon you can trust because its appearance protects you in ways that no amount of technical sophistication can match. This counterintuitive insight reflected a deeper understanding of how deception operates in intelligence work. The best disguises are not the ones that look perfect, but the ones that look like something your enemy expects to see and dismisses as irrelevant. Today, examples of KGB camouflage weapons exist in intelligence agency museums and private collections, fascinating artifacts that challenge assumptions about what makes a weapon valuable. Modern forensic examination has revealed the precision engineering hidden beneath their crude exteriors, confirming the sophistication of the deception. The weapons stand as reminders that in intelligence operations, trust comes not from obvious quality, but from understanding how your enemy thinks and what they expect to see. Those ugly weapons earned the trust of KGB operatives because they understood that sometimes the best protection is to look like something not worth a second glance, to be dismissed as junk precisely because that dismissal creates the operational space where intelligence work can succeed. In the Cold War espionage game, these weapons proved that sometimes the most sophisticated move is to look deliberately unsophisticated.